Have you ever wondered how to stop becoming your own worst enemy? You are in luck, and this is an unbelievable treat. I am interviewing Gary John Bishop, the author of the book Unfuck Yourself, How to Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Life. It sold more than 2 million copies. And this is part one of my interview with him. Hi, I'm Rebecca Zung, top 1% attorney and the author of the books Negotiate Like You Matter and Breaking Free, a Step-by-Step Divorce Guide. And I've helped thousands of people go from lives of drama, trauma, and chaos to step into lives of freedom, possibility, and purpose. And I do the same thing for you right here on this channel and in these videos and in my interviews and when I go live. So make sure you hit subscribe and you hit that notification bell and you'll get notified when I upload brand new content. So without further ado, let's dive into part one of my conversation with Gary. Hello and welcome to another episode of Negotiate Your Best Life. I'm Rebecca Zung and I'm super excited today to interview an amazing guy, a New York Times bestselling author, leading personal development expert, life coach, author of the best-selling book Unfuck Yourself, as well as Stop Doing That Shit and Do the Work, and his forthcoming book, or maybe it has already come out, called Wise as Fuck. And so this is obviously going to be a very frank, very direct conversation. You can just tell by the names of his books. So I'm really excited. Welcome, Gary.
Hi, thanks for having me, Rebecca.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you even become the journey to becoming the New York Times bestselling author on Unfuck Yourself? So obviously there's a story behind there.
Well, I'm originally from Scotland, which is why I talk like Shrek.
Why you talk like Shrek?
So a number of years ago, probably about 15 years ago, I was, happily married. I was expecting our first son. And, I was at a point in my life where I was just kind of jaded. I was like apathetic about my life, where it was going, what I was doing. And a relative of mine actually suggested, that I go and do this personal development workshop thing. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this sounds terrible, like a workshop. I just had no idea that I would participate in such a thing, but I did it. And it was very revealing, and it gave me like my first insight into the way that I worked, but not in a psychological way, actually a much more kind of holistic way. So that started me off my pathway to actually empower myself, to kind of raise my sights a little as to what my potential could be, or some kind of possibility for myself. And what happened was I was getting my stuff together, and I was noticing these big results in my life, and I'd increased my income, and I was much happier and more satisfied, and had more peace of mind with what I was doing. And I actually started to talk to other people about what I was discovering, and I was reading, and I was understanding it in a very kind of a much deeper way. So that kind of led me on this pathway where eventually I became a senior program director, actually, at one of the world's largest personal development companies. And I traveled all over the world, and delivered facilitated workshops, believe it or not, to thousands and thousands of people. And I did that for a number of years. And in the last 5 or 6 years, it's been more about myself and my writing, and kind of giving away what I've been learning and what I'm continuing to learn.
Awesome. So, you wrote this book, and it's called Unfuck Yourself. Yeah. And from what I understand, it kind of started out as like this little book that you self-published, that you kind of wrote for your the people that you were coaching, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea, or certainly no sense of like, well, this is going to be a big selling book. I mean, I think that book sold over 2 million copies now.
I know, that's right, incredible.
Yeah, right. But I really wanted to, like, this was at a time when there weren't really many books around with a curse word in the title, right? I mean, now there's just so many of them, but at the time there was none. Well, there was 2, but one of those books that had a curse word in the title was was badass. I mean, it wasn't even exactly a curse word, you know.
Yeah,
But
but that's another one of those that has like,
right,
it's kind of shocking, right?
right. But I had so many people tell me don't do it. It's, you know, because you can't advertise it anywhere. Amazon won't let you advertise it. Facebook won't let you advertise it. But I really thought, you know, this has got to be my book. I can't, you know, I got to call it what I would call it. So I did. I released it myself, and I just went online and talked about it. You know, I would go on Facebook and talk about it. I go on the Twitter and talk about it, and we ended up selling, I think, 30,000 copies in 5.5 months, and then before I know it, I've got over 20 offers for the book from major publishers, and off it went. You know, and it's been kind of following on that trail ever since.
Yeah, and now you have another one. Is it out yet, or is it?
Well, I have a new audiobook out. It's called Ask Gary Fucking Anything. Is
Yeah,
it the title? And I used a curse word in that because I wanted people to get that it's really anything. You could ask me anything, right? And I'll see if I can
yeah.
take a stab at it for you. So, so I took 8 questions into the studio, and I never wrote anything. I just went in the studio and answered the questions. And it gave me a chance to kind of dive into some of my philosophy and how I see things, and then give it to people for real life situations. So it was both really challenging, but really refreshing. Like I loved doing it. It was such a great opportunity.
And so, what's the basis of your philosophy? What differentiates you from other life coaches?
Yeah, I guess I'm not interested in making you feel better as fundamentally at the core of a lot of it, but it's based in existentialism, you know, in certain aspects of existentialism, like phenomenology and ontology, and which goes around the idea that you are a being, and you're a being in every moment of every day. And you know, I'm interested in, well, how did you become this way, and what's in the way of you becoming some other way, which includes all the changes that one might want to make in life. So it gives you this really kind of unique insight into the background of people without being psychological about it, like I said, which really isn't my field anyway. But I mean, people talk about my delivery like I speak the truth or something. I think a lot of people feel as if they speak the truth. What I often find myself saying is the sort of thing that you're uncomfortable listening to because it's so personal. But at the same time, you do know there's an element of gravitas to it that makes sense. So I guess the combination of all of that gives it my kind of unique little flavor, I guess.
Yeah, so I love the fact that you talk about ontology. And the reason why I love that is that I've had the same business coach for, I don't know, around 12 years now. And she is certified in ontology. And she was the first person I ever heard use that word.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying it's the study of being,
Right.
which, you know, I was like, I don't really even know what the heck you're talking about. So can you talk a little bit more about ontology specifically, and what does that mean, the study of being?
Right. So one of my favorite philosophers is a guy called Martin Heidegger. He was a German existentialist from the early part of the 20th century. And he was an ontologist. The ontology was a big part of his field. So if you think of yourself, you're a human being, right? Now, most people online these days talk about their favorite human or my human, but you're missing the most important part, which is the being part, right? Because you're always being something, right? You're always being something. Being what? Being angry, being resentful, being compassionate, being understanding. Those are ways of being. What's a way of being? A way of being are certain predictable thoughts that you have, coupled with an emotional state, and then you throw in the mix of some behaviors. In general terms, that's a way that you be, right? Now, as a human being, you've actually got, now as an adult human being, you've got kind of very defined ways of being, very predictable and repetitive ways that you be in life. And when you were a kid, you had a lot more of those available to you. You would be lots of different ways when you were little. But as you've gotten older, as we've all gotten older, we're more like a certain thing. So
you have one way of being all the time.
well, it's certainly within a very tight range, very kind of predictable sense of self. So in ontology, we not only take a look at, well, what was the pathway? How did you end up this way? Of all the ways that one could end up, we end up in a very distinct way. But then what am I missing out on? Like, what else is available to me? What if I could go into that situation and be courageous? And I'm never typically courageous, but man, what if I could be courageous there? That would be a way of being for you to explore. Like, what would life look like if you took it on from the aspect of courage?
Interesting.
Or what if I took life on from the aspect of love or understanding or compassion? Or so it allows you to kind of shift the context in which you participate in life.
So is that like the first step of figuring out how to unfuck yourself, by going, okay, I figured out that this is my way of being. This is kind of how I wound up being.
Right. So it certainly helped. So in my second book was called Stop Doing That Shit. And in it, I actually give you a blueprint as to how you ended up the way you are. And so you have to identify like 3 things about yourself that you've maybe never thought about, like certain, how can I say it, like a certain view you have. One of them is your view of yourself. So most people, if you ask them, what do you think of yourself? People will be fairly positive. They'll say, I think I'm a good person. I'm a decent, I do my best. I'm a hard worker. I say, but what's your opinion of yourself in your darkest corner of your mind? And then sometimes it'll come out, like, well, I don't think I'm smart enough, or I don't think I'm good enough. Right. You weren't born that way. You ended up that way. You didn't pop out like, oh shit, I'm not smart enough.
Yeah.
That kind of came to you at some point in life, kind of bedded itself in with each of us, whatever we ended up with.
Well, I think it's like conclusions that you end up drawing based on faulty reasoning when you're 5 years old or something, right?
Right. But then it also includes, but if you think about it that way, like I've concluded something about myself, okay? If I've concluded something about myself, it never goes anywhere. Like it rises, it falls, but it never moves. It never leaves me. So if what I've concluded about myself is I'm not smart enough, if I've not done the work to kind of uncover that for myself, it'll drive me in a certain direction. I'll just make decisions based on that without even checking in to see what I'm basing it on. But it includes like a bigger picture, but sure, like your ontological makeup, how you became you. It's not only very revealing, but very freeing, because then you start to see alternatives to what you kind of got yourself stuck with.
And how does self-talk layer in with your ontological being?
Yeah. Well, you're always talking to yourself about the same stuff. Right. And you've got the same hooks and the same triggers and the same hangups and the same. I mean, you got to try on the idea that you're constantly listening for and looking for evidence that your subconscious view of everything is accurate. So in the background of your mind, it's these little triggers and, oh yeah, I need to remember to do that. And I have to, and I can't do that. Well, I'm not going to do this. And then she said, "Ma, that's stupid." So the whole noise in the background is shaping a certain view of the world, if you like. So that noise, you have to start checking in on that. Like, what am I saying to myself? What is that based on? Why did I tell myself no there instead of yes there? To me, that growing sense of awareness of your own automatic, of your, as I call it, that little voice in your head.
Yeah.
The more you get,
which is usually not a really smart little voice.
It's
kind of like an idiot.
Right. I mean, I would love to wake up in the morning and my little voice is like, "You're amazing."
Yeah, but it never does. No,
it doesn't. It goes, "Oh shit, here we go again."
Yeah.
It's the same noise in your head, but it's not. And it's not some kind of accident, that noise. It's designed to equip you to survive in a world. But the problem is you're surviving stuff that you just don't need to survive. You shouldn't survive your job. You're not supposed to survive your marriage. You're not supposed to survive your body. But we end up with these mechanisms that we're in this kind of internal war. And so, I want people to do the right kind of work on themselves in a way that makes sense to them and allows them to get insight into themselves to free themselves up. Because ultimately, that kind of introspection is really what starts you on your way.
Thanks for watching this part 1 of my conversation with Gary John Bishop. This was an unbelievable conversation, and part 2 is even more exciting and more interesting. And he's given me such advice that I personally have been thinking about every day since I had my conversation with him. So if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, and that way you'll get notified when I upload part 2 of this video. And if you liked it, give it a like, give it a share, drop me a comment, and let me know that you were here. If you are getting ready to negotiate with the narcissist, go ahead and grab my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. It's at the link below, or you can just go to winmynegotiation.com. And if you want to join me in my free private Facebook group, it's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. I'd love to see you in that as well. So thanks so much for stopping by. I'm Rebecca Zung. Remember, today's a great day to start negotiating your best life. I'll see you in the next video.